Hello, Hannah. How are you? Hannah, are you there? Hello, is anyone there? Hello? Hello?
Hello, are you able to share your screen?
I can.
Excellent.
Tell me if you can see it.
I can. Awesome. Thank you. I'm trying to make sure we have all the things. And I can hear you, so that means everything should be working.
Yeah.
Properly. Cool.
So this is the portal that we're going to do my talk through, what you and I are on right now.
Yes, we're going to use Zoom mainly.
Okay.
And then the Whoova, or however you say it, is just like the one-stop shop for everything. Are you using Chrome right now if you're on Wahoo?
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. No, I always use Chrome.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So do I, but it doesn't work if you're not on Chrome with some of the features we're trying to use, I guess. So I'm to make sure everyone is using it properly. So you can stop sharing for a moment if you want.
Okay.
And I'll make sure everybody who comes in is where they need to be.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm glad that connected with somebody. I was just wanted to make sure it was working. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
global R&D operation leader for Prozac and Shiger's project teams. She has served a number of professional and community volunteer roles, including on the board of directors of the American Chemical Society, the Chemistry Advisory Board of Princeton Chemistry, the board of directors of Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, and the Kalamazoo College Board of Trustees. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Appreciate your introduction, and welcome to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are finding yourselves today. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, coming through okay? Fantastic, great. What I'm going to do is share my screen in order to share our slides for today. So again, I will just ask if you could give me a note of feedback if you can see my desktop.
Yes, we can.
You can. Fantastic. Great. All right. So I'm going to put my slides in slideshow mode. So if for some reason somebody has a question or you want to stop and interrupt me, just please jump in, because I might not be able to see anybody raising their hand. All right. So I'm trying to get rid of our. Okay. All right, slideshow. Let's just put it in slideshow mode here from the beginning. All right. Does everybody see that now?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So again, thank you so much to the organizers, Christine, Jay, Carolina, all the people who have worked so hard to put this very ambitious symposium together. It's very timely, a highly relevant topic, and I'm really excited to be with you all this morning. The DEIR movement has been going on in the ACS for a long time now. It is a journey for sure. And we've made a lot of progress in the last couple of years on that journey. And my purpose of today's presentation is share with you a little bit about the strategic work that the board has been doing to set the stage for, we hope, a very, very positive future path. So the title of my presentation is the ACS DEIR Board Progress in 21 and 22 and looking forward into the future. So what I'd like to do is start out with a couple of background slides just to set the baseline understanding about what we're talking about. What does DEIR, what do those initials mean to the ACS? Of course, they represent four very, very important words. And these concepts have been under development in the ACS for a long time. As I mentioned, some of them are newer. But, for example, the diversity, the concept of diversity is a core value of the ACS, has been around for years and years and years. And I think many of us already know what diversity means, but it is representation. That's really what we're talking about, of all our varied identities and differences. Equity, which is actually the newest term to be added to our concept, is actually about making sure that folks have fair treatment. And I have in a subsequent slide, a little picture about how we can envision equity in our minds. Inclusion was also sort of for a long time a very standard term here, things that we all understand, which means making sure that everybody's voices are heard. Everybody is working hard to create a balance of representation of the different differences, and that we're inclusive, not only in our communications, but also our thoughts and our behaviors. And then finally, respect, which was added in 2019, at the beginning of 2019, means, what we would expect it to mean, that people are being treated fairly with professionalism, integrity, and using good ethics underpinning everything that we do. So just wanted to start out with a couple of definitions so that we're a little bit on the same page with regard to what we mean by the letters DEIR. And then the other thing, to just by way of introduction, I'd like to share with you is, who is the ACS Board of Directors? That might be a question for some of you. This year's Board of Directors shown on this slide. The top left row represents the presidential succession for 2021 and 22. So as everybody knows, H.N. Chang is our current president. Professor Angela Wilson is going to be our president in 2022. And Professor Louis Echegoyen just finished up his presidency this year. He is the past president of the ACS. The other pictures that you see on the screen, 6 of the individuals are district directors like me. I have the privilege of representing District 2 to the ACS Board of Directors. 6 of the folks that are on this slide are actually elected as directors at large, which means they could represent the entire constituency and they can be elected from any part of the ACS. And then we, of course, also have got the ex officio member of president of the ACS, who is Tom Connolly. And you can see his picture in the middle of the second row on the left. So those are the members of the board of directors who have been working very, very hard to set the strategic direction that I will be describing to you as we go through this talk. So the other thing I wanted to mention, just again, as way of context and background, is that this board of directors you're looking at has got a committee that's called Professional and Member Relations. And for short, we call it PMR. Professional and Member Relations is the committee that is charged with looking at diversity DEIR strategy for the ACS. As a member of the Professional Member and Relations Committee, I was asked to lead up a DEIR board working group last year. And so one of the reasons that I've been invited to share today is because I have been working specifically for the board and for PMR for now about 2 years in a capacity of leadership for DEIR. So what did we do when we first got going last year? Well, we formed a cross-organizational team of committed leaders that were all very, very invested and committed to making progress in this area of DEIR. And you can see the names here on the screen. We have a variety of different representations on our board working group. We have got members of the board, which are shown here in blue. We have a DEIR advisory board, which is also part of the PMR committee. That is led by Dr. Natalie LaFranzo, and the advisory board consists of the chairs of all of the ACS diversity committees. So you guys are very familiar with the Women's Chemist Committee, the Younger Chemist Committee, the Senior Chemist Committee, the Committee on Minority Affairs. Those chairs are facilitated in their discussions about implementation of DEIR strategies through Natalie. She also has several people from outside diversity groups such as Nobuche and SACNIS and some of those kinds of committees that join the DEIR advisory board. Again, they're very focused on implementation. We have some members of the ACS staff that are on our board working group. And these folks are probably familiar to you. So Ben Fiore-Walker has been working with us as a liaison in this area for a long time. Ben is terrific. He's very committed to these kinds of efforts. And then recently, Tom Connolly, the president and CEO of ACS, appointed a diversity officer, a chief diversity officer. And you can see Raj is joining also. Raj is joining our board working group. So I wanted to let you know who was on this board working group and creating some of the forward-looking strategies. And then I'm just going to provide a brief summary of where we've been in the last 2 years. So you all know, and you've participated yourselves in many task forces, advisory boards, workshops, retreats. We've been doing a lot of work in this area, on this movement for a long time. We started this particular kind of contemporary journey in January of 2019 by adding respect to the core value of the ACS strategic plan. And then a year later, last January, we had a joint workshop, and this was held in Atlanta, Georgia, and it brought together about 60 people representing the advisory board, which I just explained, Natalie leads, ACS staff, so that would be Tom Connolly and his leadership team, ACS Board of Directors. You just saw the pictures of all the Board of Directors and folks that were helping to facilitate. There was actually a professional facilitator. Made a lot of progress. And as a result, in February of 2020, I was asked to lead this effort to start creating some more strategic principles, some more strategic guidance for the ACS working with the board working group. So we created guiding principles. We created different, we kind of broke down the work into logical pieces and started talking about who was going to work on strategy, who was going to work on implementation, and those divided between the board working group and the advisory board, as we've already heard. And by the end of last year, there was a lot of progress made. And you'll hear as we go through the presentation, we added a goal to the ACS strategic plan. First time that had happened in many, many years. We actually updated the core value to include the word equity. And so as you guys know, we now have that new core value, refreshed core value. And then finally, we continued the work into 2021 with some more workshops for the advisory board and more work for the board working group. So that is, in a nutshell, what has happened. And I'm going to just kind of go through a little bit of detail here so that you can see a little bit more about how we actually got to where we got to by the end of last year, as well as the progress we've made this year. So last year, as I said, in January of 2020, we had a very large workshop in Atlanta, Georgia. And following that, we convened a group of the board to put together some guiding principles. And this really was to catch the momentum of that workshop. We had a lot of positive energy about what we could be doing, what we should be doing. So we wanted to capture that. And we put together 5 guiding principles to sort of lead our thought process going forward. And they are shown here. There are a couple of really important phrases here as we go from top to bottom of these guiding principles. In the first one, you will see this concept of a culture of inclusion. We want to get to the point where nobody ever has this thought that this is a compliance thing, that this is really the way we are in our behaviors together. Our culture is inclusive, and we wanted to capture that first. The second one is to highlight the importance of communication and advocacy to make sure that we get the word out and we keep the word out about what needs to be happening to advance equity in our community. The third one had to do with empowering members of every part of the ACS to get involved and drive diversity and inclusion. This is by no means one small group's remit. This is all of our responsibility. It's all of our remit. So we wanted to capture that. We want to continue to embed DEIR principles into all ACS programs, whether it's a local section, a technical division, whatever it is. We want to make sure that those thoughts are in the front of everybody's minds as we're thinking about what our different ACS activities are. And then finally, to continue the very, very rich and fruitful collaboration we've had with external partners. The ACS has grown in its understanding of what's going on in the world and in this environment by partnering with external organizations, diverse organizations. And that was something that we wanted to emphasize we must continue to do. And so we started with those principles, and then the next big step occurred, which was to formally create this board strategy working group. I want to credit Dr. Dorothy Phillips and Dr. Barbara Sari, who were the chairs of the 2 committees, PMR and the Strategic Planning Committee, that created our group. They developed a charge and gave us a specific task. And just for the sake of time, I will go to the task, which is highlighted in red on this slide. So in the spring of 2020, the Board Strategy Working Group, which is called the Board Working Group, was tasked with primarily and first and foremost, figuring out ACS's strategic approach to the DEIR, well, at that point it was DINR strategy, within the larger framework of the ACS strategic plan. So this was where we came together as a board working group. And now you know who those people were. These came from the hearts and the minds of the folks that you saw a couple of slides ago to actually dive in and figure out, how do we want this organization to move forward? What are the key changes that we want to make to ensure a robust long-term strategic direction? And so we got to work. What are some of the things that were the context for the work that we were doing? Well, in the first place, when we started out in March and April, there was a passion, there was a mission, absolutely, for sure. And then in May of last year, a lot of things changed. And you all know what happened in May. There were, in the first place, the tragic killing of George Floyd, and then the absolute outpouring of reactions that were across the world. It wasn't just in the ACS, but there were also strong reactions that we heard about from members of the ACS calling for a different approach, a much more intentional and stepped up approach. We heard that, and that was incredibly inspiring and motivating for us. We decided that we wanted to create strategic statements that would encompass all of the thoughts that came about during that time, and that we would make sure that we would take advantage of that groundswell of support that came up for social justice in the sciences. And it came from all over. It was from our members, from corporations, from other professional societies, other institutions. This became the mission that we adopted.
No, everything has been working well. I've been working with Joe.
Excuse me, please mute. Thank you. Okay, so this was the context for what we did, and what we were able to accomplish was the following. By the end of the summer, we had, in the first place, developed an ACS goal to add to the ACS strategic plan. Now, you all remember, and I know you guys have all got your little pocket cards with the ACS strategic plan. The ACS strategic plan has had 4 goals for as long as everyone can remember. And the board working group felt this was an important enough point in time and an important enough mission that we needed to include it in the ACS strategic plan. So that was our first recommendation. The second one was, as you know, to include the word equity in the ACS core value, which would, what we felt would really expand and address that full spectrum of diverse equity, inclusion, and respect concepts for the ACS for all time. We're trying to create a strategic principle that's going to carry us forward for many, many years to come. And then finally, because the ACS plan is strategic plan is a living document, there were points in that document that needed to be updated to reflect the new core value, to reflect the updated goal that was added. And so we did some cleanup on the strategic plan to explicitly state what we felt were the most important concepts that needed to be updated in the ACS strategic plan. So let's go through and just take a minute and take a look at what was added to the ACS strategic plan. Recommendation 1, as just mentioned, was to add a goal. Goal 5 was titled Advocate for Inclusion in Chemistry. That was a short form. The long form is shown here on the slide, towards the bottom of the slide. The long form is, again, we are trying to, well, we didn't try, we are choosing action verbs: advocate for inclusion, promote diversity and inclusion. We wanted to send home the message that it is in our actions, it is in our behavior and our communications that we are going to make a change that needs to happen. And so you can see the actual detailed language of the goal was to promote diversity, inclusion, equity, and respect, dismantle barriers to success, create a sustainable, welcoming, and supportive environment so that all ACS members, employees, and volunteers can thrive within the ACS. So that was the very first recommendation that we made. The second recommendation was to expand the language of the ACS core value. Again, this is part of the ACS strategic plan, to include the word equity. And we've talked a little bit already about what does equity mean for the ACS earlier in the presentation. You saw the slide, and here you can see the details of now how the core value is articulated within the strategic plan. So we embrace and promote diversity in all its forms to create a more inclusive environment for the practice of chemistry and provide fair and just outcomes for everyone to achieve their full potential. And that's really what equity is all about. Inclusion of and respect for people of all backgrounds, perspectives, experiences, and ideas will lead to superior solutions to our challenges, to create and advance chemistry as a global and multidisciplinary science. So I wanted to show you these two specific recommendations so you could see the language that went with them. By the end of August, we had presented these to our two sponsoring board committees, PMR, which is Professional Member Relations, and SPC, the Strategic Planning Committee. So these recommendations went through the committee reviews during the months of September and October, and then they were presented to the full board of directors in December of 2020, approved and officially adopted into the ACS strategic plan as of January 1st of this year, 2021. So we felt like we had made a big step forward. However, as we've mentioned, this is a journey and there was more work to do. So you might be asking, what do we do next? So here comes our next slide. We got back together in February of 21, earlier this year, and took a look back. You know, we started the journey, we made some great progress. One of the things that we had done in order to actually formulate the new goal and the updated core value was to do some external information gathering. We actually went out and looked on the websites of, I don't know, probably 20 different professional societies to find out how were they thinking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect. We learned a lot from that exercise, and we parlayed that into the update of the strategic plan. But we also saw a lot of interesting information on those websites that we thought, maybe there's some more that we can do there. So we reconvened the DEIR board working group, and we decided that we wanted to create and continue this information gathering effort this year in order to answer some more key questions about what we can do as an ACS in order to advance this mission and this journey that we're on. So here are the two things that we decided to do in 2021. We would expand the DEIR strategic platform through additional information sharing and gathering with our professional societies. And we wanted to support another round of DEIR advisory board workshops, which Natalie and her team led. So I just want to make sure that you guys know that we're continuing this work. It's very important to us. We are examining from the external professional societies, their cultures, their strategies, any specific tactics that they've used that were game changers for them. We're bringing all this information together, again, with the intention of coming back to the board in December of this year with another set of recommendations for consideration. There have been some other things that have been going on in the ACS, which I wanted to make sure were on your radar. One was that, again, I mentioned earlier, Tom Connolly took the decision to establish an official office of DEIR within the ACS staff. Now, there is a leadership role that reports directly to him, who has taken on the work of DEIR within the ACS staff and will become the point of coordination for all the work that the board is doing, the advisory board is doing, our committees are doing as time goes on. We really want to make sure that we have a single coordinated effort. As I mentioned, the advisory boards had additional workshops, and we are continuing on our journey with the board working group. Just to make sure that it was clear, we also have some agreements. We meet regularly between our three groups, the leadership, Raj, Natalie, and I. We meet on a monthly basis. We make sure that we're sharing information and that we're aligned with our efforts and not duplicating. And we're working very hard to make sure that we continue to provide as many opportunities as we can to everyone in our organizations to make contributions in this space. So to wrap it up and give us some time for questions, what does the future hold for the ACS? What we're looking to see here in the next 2 to 3 years is at the top of the slide, goal number 5 in action, and the DEIR core value in action. We want to promote and enable as much work as we can to really see those goals and core values come to life. And you might ask, where should we look to see action and progress? Down at the bottom of the slide, you can see that we're all in. We want to see this going on in our local sections, in our committees, in the divisions, in governance, and in every corner of the ACS. Basically, we feel that this is an important time for all of our different subunits of the ACS to reflect on where we are in the journey and to embrace and continue on in their own way, in every subunit's appropriate way, to advance this mission for the constituents that they serve. So that is the end of my talk. I want to thank you all very, very much for your attention and allowing me to provide a little bit of background, and we can open it up for Q&A now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone has questions, they can unmute themselves or just type on the chat and I can read. Well, I have one question just to start the discussion. So that's great that the ACS, it's really focusing like what they can do to improve regarding DIR. What do you suggest we do as scientists on our daily basis life?
The DEIR principles are things that should change our thoughts and change our actions. And, there is a step in here where as scientists, we need to make sure, first of all, that we are self-aware, that we think ourselves about assumptions, maybe some biases that we've developed over our careers, wherever we are in our careers, the way we think about things. And from that self-awareness, it will drive different behaviors and different communications. So, at a very personal level, I just would encourage everyone to think about, how do you view the people who are in your life? And are you fully aware of, how you treat different genders, different cultures, different races? Think about that a little bit. And, there are things that you could do to change your behavior if you realize, maybe I haven't been as open-minded as I could have. Maybe I haven't been inclusive as I could have. I would just encourage everybody to start out with that first step of self-awareness and really ask yourself a couple of hard questions in your mind and just a personal reflection. Everybody has something to learn in this space. There's nobody that's got this perfect or nobody that's got this right. We all have something to learn. So I would encourage to start out with some self-reflection. And then if there's something that you recognize that you could be doing differently, take that step and make it happen.
Awesome, thank you. We have 2 questions in the chat. Are there any thoughts to how this would look for ACS certified undergraduate degrees?
So just to make sure I'm clear on the question, does this have to do with the actual course content that's required for an ACS certified degree?
I think that's what the person is asking. Ann Wilson, if you can say something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
I'm well.
Good.
So, as we're thinking, maybe it's because we're under review this year, but I'm very interested in this. But, is this something that would be part of course content? Is this something that would be part of the professional training piece that we have for ACS certified degrees? I mean, it's just, I'm trying to envision what this would look like and start from the ground up with our young chemists and sort of bring them all the way through. And I'm just not understanding how it would look.
Thank you, Anne. No, that's a great question and obviously a very visionary question. At this point in time, the approaches that we're using are more programmatic in terms of professional training, workshops, self-assessments, organizational assessments, and so on. I have not heard about it actually formally being incorporated into an academic curriculum. However, I mean, it's a good question. We are going to offer multiple different opportunities for ACS courses and ACS trainings. So people will have access to those from a professional development perspective. But it's an interesting question. I don't think we've really talked about how this might integrate into curriculum. So, I guess we could take it into the Committee on Education or, one of those similar sorts of committees. I'll definitely ask the question the next time I'm in the board working group, see what people think. Thank you.
Thanks.
We have another.
New goal and our core values, and to come up with their own action plans. So, as a board, what we try to do is set strategic direction, and then, let all of the ACS subunits take that on and think about it. So yes, I do believe that some of these committees you'll see, like CPT, I know for sure that CONC, the Committee on Committees, has fully embraced these core values. And many of the committees have as well thought about how they want to incorporate these principles into their working model. So yeah, I think that is going to be happening.
Thank you. Kimberly, you can ask.
Hi, I was just wondering, how will ACS measure success? How often will the group get together and say, hey, we're doing well in certain areas, there's a watch out in other areas? What does success look like for ACS?
Thank you, Kimberly. That is pretty much the question of the hour. And so many people are considering that. And we also, to what we've shared today, we're looking at how other organizations do that as well. So what we've learned, and actually Dorothy Phillips, who I've mentioned and you all know very, very well, participated in the National Academy of Sciences workshop that happened earlier this summer. And they were, in that meeting, they were actually discussing this really critical issue. And what they recommended is, rather than looking at sort of macro, like counting heads and how many of this kind of a person or this kind of a gender or this kind of an ethnic group do we have, rather to count the number of efforts that you have that are actually trying to change something. It's the small moves. This was the conclusion of that workshop. It's the small moves that make a difference. So for example, some of the things we were just talking about, the local sections and divisions and committees building in a goal 5 to their activities, the strategic planning process that you've been through strategic planning workshops. Every single subunit that has a strategic planning workshop will now be discussing their goal 5. Goal 5 means action. So what we want to start keeping track of is how many of these small moves can we get going in the ACS, because we feel that will create a momentum that will get us to a culture rather than a check the box kind of a mentality, which we all know, we've been living that for decades. That doesn't work. Checking the box and counting noses doesn't work. It's got to be these actions that lead us to being more inclusive and having a more equitable approach to the work that we do.
Thank you. We have time for one more. And wondering how you might envision local ACS chapters acting on those aims, or maybe what are the other local ACS chapters doing already that could be translated across multiple chapters. Is there a centralized place we could find this info?
Well, for the first place, I will give a huge shout out to the Indiana section for doing this. I mean, this is a fantastic opportunity to bring together so many different perspectives and views about what we need to be doing to improve ourselves in the DEIR space. So let's shout out to this section. And then, yes, there is a local section committee that has, actions on a goal 5, and they will be working to enable other local sections to do things. I've already been participating this year in several regional meetings where they actually have had similar sorts of events, symposia, summits that address DEIR. People are starting to take this on and integrate it into their normal course of business, which is absolutely terrific. That's what we want to see. But, you should stay tuned for the local section committee, LSAC, to start putting out probably some more information, sharing more information across sections that could be replicated, duplicated, and leveraged for additional activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you have any other question, we can put the question on the discussion board on Woovan, and then we can answer those questions there and keep the discussion going on. Thank you so much for everyone attending, and enjoy the symposium.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.